Rwanda-backed M23 rebels who have waged
M23 are not Rwandans.
Okay, I completely understand how difficult it can be to think rationally about what's going on in Eastern DRC. The situation on the ground is horrid, heartbreaking, and has escalated fast this week. M23 rebels have tightened their grip on Goma, and they're claiming to have taken total control of the region's capital. Heavy battles between the rebels and Congolese forces have left bodies scattered in the streets, while hospitals have struggled to cope with the rising number of casualties, an estimated 100 dead. And that's on top of 30 years of consistent systemic violence against civilians, which has displaced some 8 million people. It's infuriating and unfathomable. But let's be real. Beyond the war on the ground, there is another one that's raging and adding insult to injury. And that is the war of narratives. A war of narratives and words that has emerged in the last few years between the Congolese and Rwandan governments. And that's also involved citizens of each country going at each other's throat online. It's an all-out blame game. But let's have a hard look at what each camp is alleging and whether or not it holds water. Starting with M23. When violence hits Kivu, M23 is almost always involved. This Tutsi-led rebel group signed a peace deal with the DRC in 2009 but mutinied in 2012, accusing the government of failing to honor the agreement. M23 claims to defend Tutsis and protect them from Hutu militias linked to the 1994 Rwandan genocide. But here's the truth. M23 isn't just fighting Congolese forces and other armed factions. They've been responsible for the deaths and displacement of thousands of innocent civilians. And they're not alone. Dozens of other armed groups are wreaking havoc, primarily in Ituri, Nord Kivu, and Sud Kivu. The DRC accuses Rwanda of fueling M23's violent incursions, while Rwanda has denied involvement, attributing the unrest to the DRC's internal issues. But the evidence suggests that M23's rise is no coincidence. Over the past years, the militia has grown stronger, better armed, and better trained. Despite Rwanda's denial, reports from the UN and other international bodies show clear links between Kigali and M23, backed by eyewitnesses and captured M23 fighter statements. These links range from training to direct oversight to the presence of 3,000 to 4,000 Rwandan troops on the ground in the DRC that M23 fighters have reportedly referred to as the friendly force. Now, the continuous acknowledgement and condemnation of Rwanda's involvement by the UN and Western nations has made it a bit difficult and more challenging for the country's spokespeople to commit to outright denial. On Sunday, for example, Rwanda's foreign ministry said in a statement, this fighting close to the Rwandan border continues to present a serious threat to Rwanda's security and territorial integrity and necessitates Rwanda's sustained defensive posture. So to sum it up, Rwanda has claimed it has nothing to do with the rise of M23, that their progress is mainly due to the lack of political wisdom of the Congolese government, but also that some of the ousted perpetrators of the genocide against Tutsis have been sheltering in Congo since 1994, forming militias with alliances with the Congolese government, and posing a threat to Congolese Tutsis and Rwanda itself. And that consequently, Rwanda has to protect its border and territorial integrity. This is the reason why some thousands of Rwandan soldiers were seen marching into Goma this week, right? Right. Ultimately, the continued violence is fueled by a scramble for resources in the mineral-rich Kivu region. The DRC government accuses Rwanda of backing M23 to plunder Congo's resources, cobalt, gold, tantalum, namely. Here too, the evidence against Rwanda is piling up. The UN and human rights groups have reported M23 taking control of mineral-rich areas, allegedly with Rwandan help. In 2024, M23 seized Rubaya, a key coltan mining hub, and now reportedly makes $800,000 a month in taxes from the trade. As Beyond the Noise has previously highlighted, the DRC is home to between 60% and 80% of the world's known reserves of coltan. Interestingly, between 2013 and 2014, Rwanda became the world's leading exporter of coltan. So you do the math. These resources are crucial for global industries, making them a focal point in the conflict. Which brings us to the final parties in this intractable cycle. The international community, which has urged Rwanda to respect the DRC's sovereignty and called for an end to external interference. But beyond the reoccurring condemnations, Western powers have largely remained passive towards Rwanda, which the Congolese government has called out repeatedly and again this week. Congolese civilians also took to the streets in Kinshasa, burning tires and ransacking embassies as they accused the international community of being complicit to the violence. Many believe global powers turn a blind eye to what's going on because they benefit from the region's instability to plunder Congo's wealth as well. A sentiment that President Kagame himself has echoed in the past as a way to absolve Rwanda of its responsibility and shift blame and focus on other stakeholders. Have a listen.
Some people come from Congo, whether they smuggle or go through the right channels, they bring minerals, but most of it goes through here, does not stay here. It goes to Dubai, goes to Brussels, goes to Tel Aviv.
Ultimately, the conflicting narratives between the DRC and Rwanda, coupled with the international community's ambiguous stance on what's going on, have muddied the efforts to resolve the crisis. As we speak, the umpteenth pourparlers between the two governments have failed before they even had a chance to begin. However, one truth should remain clear. Questioning and scrutinizing Rwanda's role in the DRC crisis doesn't absolve the Congolese government of its own responsibility. It must protect its people, do everything it can to restore stability internally and in the region, and address corruption and interethnic violence that is rampant, if there's any hope for peace in Kivu.